A millionaire CEO was sweating bullets in his luxury office, with 30 minutes to close an $750 million deal with a group of German investors. The problem? His translator, the best in Sydney, had just been involved in a terrible accident. It looked like all was lost, didn't it? Well, wait until you hear what a simple office cleaner had to say. Her name is Chloe Bennett, and what she did that day changed everything forever. The story of Chloe Bennett. Owen Davies felt his hands tremble as he hung up the phone. At 52, he had built an empire from scratch, overcome crises and betrayals, but never the panic he felt in his level 40 office in the heart of the Sydney CBD. The news was the kind that could ruin your career. Klaus Vogel, his star translator, was seriously injured after an accident, and the Germans were arriving in 27 minutes. Mr. Davies, his executive assistant, Sarah's voice, sounded nervous over the intercom. The reports were ready, but the translator. Owen stood up from his imported leather chair and began to pace. Through the window, he could see the chaos of the city, but today, even that couldn't distract him from the impending disaster. Sarah entered, pale, with a list of papers that looked like a death sentence. "Sir, I called every German translator in the city. Everyone is busy or can't get here in time. The best I could get is someone for 4 p.m. Owen stared at her intently. "Sarah, the Germans arrive in 20 minutes. This meeting is worth $750 million. If we lose this contract, we'll have to lay off half the company." It was no exaggeration. He had staked everything on this international expansion with the German group Schaefer and Cerner. It had been his dream for 15 years. Owen ran his hands through his hair. He spoke English, but German was a mystery. "Google Translate? No good?" he asked desperately. Sarah replied, "Sir, they'll know instantly. Plus, we're talking about complex contracts, technical terms, legal subtleties. It's not a restaurant conversation." She was right. The phone rang. It was Dieter Schaefer, the German patriarch, speaking in precise German that Owen didn't understand. "Sehr gut. Dankeschön," was all Owen could manage before hanging up, praying he had said something appropriate. "Sarah, they're here in 15 minutes. 15. Owen yelled for the first time. "If we can't communicate, they'll think we're amateurs. They'll cancel everything." Outside, employees had stopped working. It was the first time they had seen their boss lose his cool. Liam, the CFO, approached the door. "Owen, can I help?" His German was worse than Owen's. "Liam, do you know anyone who speaks German? Anyone at all?" Liam hesitated. "My daughter has a tutor, but she's teaching and knows nothing about business." He suggested speaking English, but Owen dismissed it immediately. "Are you mad? They're traditional investors. They'll think we're not serious. They value protocol, education, sophistication." Jess, the marketing director, appeared at the door. "What if we explain the medical emergency?" Owen slumped into his chair. "Jess, they flew from Frankfurt just for this. If we can't even communicate, they'll think we're a backyard operation." The clock struck 3. In 10 minutes, the Schaefer family would be in the boardroom, waiting for a presentation Owen couldn't give. Sarah tried one last idea. "Sir, I'll call the German-Australian chamber." As she frantically dialed, Owen saw a black Mercedes stop outside. 3 well-dressed men, clearly European, got out. Owen's stomach lurched. "Sarah, they're here. They're here, and we don't have a translator." It was then that Chloe Bennett passed down the hallway, pushing her cleaning trolley. She had been working in the building for 2 years, always invisible, silent. A 43-year-old woman with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in the blue uniform of the cleaning company. Chloe had heard the commotion from Mr. Davies' office, but she was used to yelling executives. Today, however, the tone was different. She had never heard him so desperate, so human. Chloe stopped cleaning when she heard the word German, repeated several times. Her hand tightened on the cloth. Germany, Frankfurt, a life she had left behind 4 years ago and was trying to forget every day. "There is no one who speaks German in this company," Owen shouted. Chloe approached the door, fighting her instincts to remain invisible. But the desperation of that man touched something deep inside her. Perhaps it reminded her of her own moments of despair. "Excuse me." Chloe knocked softly on the open door. All heads turned. "Chloe, it's not the time for cleaning," Sarah said automatically. Chloe took a deep breath and took a step into the room. "Apologies for the interruption, but I heard you talking about German." Owen looked at her impatiently. "Chloe, we are in the middle of a crisis. The Germans are coming up now. I know, sir, that's why I came. Chloe paused, knowing the next words would change everything. I speak fluent German. The silence was deafening. Owen blinked. Sarah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Liam and Jess exchanged incredulous glances. You. What? Owen finally managed to say. I speak fluent German, sir. I lived in Frankfurt for 12 years. Chloe kept her voice steady. Owen studied her as if seeing her for the first time. For 2 years, Chloe Bennett had been part of the furniture. Now, suddenly, she was offering to save him from the biggest crisis of his life. Are you sure? Owen asked in disbelief. Absolutely. I worked in Frankfurt. I know German culture. Can I help? Chloe's heart raced. She was offering to return to a world she had sworn never to be part of again. From the hallway came the sound of German voices. The investors had arrived. Owen looked at Chloe, at his team, at the clock. He had no choice. It was trust, a cleaner or lose. $750 million. Sarah, take Chloe to the executive washroom. Get her suitable attire. Quickly. Jess, prepare a folder with our materials. Liam, welcome the Germans and stall for time. Owen took a deep breath. Chloe, I hope you know what you're doing. Chloe nodded, trembling inside. It wasn't just translating. It was returning to who she was, touching wounds that still bled, facing a past that had destroyed her. As Sarah dragged her away to get ready, Chloe heard the Germans being welcomed. Their voices were polite, refined, exactly as she remembered from the executives she used to work with. And for the first time in 4 years, Chloe Bennett was preparing to return to the corporate world, not as the COO of a multinational she once was, but as the impromptu translator who could save or ruin Owen Davies's company. The fate of millions of dollars was in the hands of a cleaner who held secrets no one imagined. Chloe knew that after this meeting, nothing would be the same. She wouldn't be able to be invisible. And perhaps, for the first time in 4 years, she didn't want to hide. Sarah practically dragged Chloe down the hall to the executive washroom. Chloe had never been in this part of the building. It was a world of luxury and modernity. Chloe, are you absolutely sure you speak German? If this goes wrong, Mr. Davies will fire us on the spot. Chloe looked at herself in the mirror. A 43-year-old woman, tired, with wrinkles that hadn't existed 4 years ago. The cleaning uniform made her look exactly like what she had become. Invisible. Dispensable. I'm sure, Sarah. I worked for a French multinational for 8 years. I was the director of operations. The words came out before Chloe could regret them. Sarah stopped, eyes wide. It's a long story. We need to focus on the meeting now. Chloe avoided the details. Sarah pulled out a navy blazer, a white blouse, and a formal skirt. Put this on quickly. They must be in the boardroom by now. Chloe changed. It had been 4 years since she wore formal clothing, participated in a corporate meeting, or spoke professional German. It was like riding a bike again after a bad accident. Chloe, I need to know the truth. Do you really understand business? Because they're going to talk about contracts, investments, technical terms that even I can't pronounce. Sarah was visibly nervous. Chloe adjusted the blazer and looked at herself in the mirror. The transformation was striking. Suddenly she looked like a real executive. Sarah, for 8 years, I closed contracts worth tens of millions of euros. I negotiated with the largest corporate groups in Germany. I know exactly what I'm doing. Chloe took a deep breath, feeling something inside her awaken. But I need 5 minutes alone before the meeting to prepare mentally. We don't have 5 minutes. The Germans are waiting, and Owen is having a breakdown. Sarah, if you want me to do this right, to save this company from the biggest blunder in its history, I need those 5 minutes. Trust me. Sarah hesitated. There was something different about Chloe. 5 minutes. No more than that, Sarah said, and rushed out. Chloe sat on the leather armchair and closed her eyes. She needed to travel back in time. She needed to find Chloe. Kristen Dumont, the one who lived in an elegant apartment in Paddington, spoke German every day and negotiated with Europe's biggest corporate groups as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She remembered the meetings at the Schaefer and Cerner headquarters in Frankfurt. She knew that family well. Conservative, traditional, they valued protocol and elegance above all else. Dieter was especially strict with business etiquette. One slip-up, and the meeting would be lost. Chloe opened her eyes and stood up. It was time to return to who she really was. Outside, Owen was pacing nervously. Liam was trying to entertain the Germans with coffee. Owen, are you sure about this? Jess whispered to Sarah. Staking everything on a cleaner? Owen was sweating. Sarah approached with an expression of surprise and nervousness. Owen, I need to tell you something. Chloe said she was the director of operations for a French multinational for 8 years. Owen stopped dead in his tracks. What? How so? She said she closed contracts worth tens of millions of euros. Owen, maybe she really knows what she's doing. Maybe she's not just a cleaner. Before Owen could process the information, Chloe appeared in the hallway. The transformation was so dramatic that no one recognized her. The blazer fit her perfectly. Her posture was erect, confident. She didn't walk apologetically, but like someone who knew exactly where she was going. "Mr. Davies," Chloe said, and even her voice sounded different, firmer, professional, with an authority that didn't fit the image they had of her. "I'm ready." Owen studied her. There was something about her presence he hadn't noticed before, a natural confidence, an elegance that wasn't learned. "Chloe, before we go in, I need to know something. Can you really do this? This meeting is worth the future of the company. If it goes wrong..." Chloe looked him straight in the eyes without blinking. "Mr. Davies, for 8 years, I represented one of the world's largest German companies in Australasia. I closed alliances that changed entire markets. I know exactly how to deal with German investors." Owen's jaw dropped. "Which company?" "Siemens, as regional director for all of Australasia, reporting directly to the board in Munich." Chloe paused, watching the shock on their faces. "But that's the past. Today, I'm here to help you," Jess whispered to Sarah. "How does an ex-director of Siemens become a cleaner?" "It makes no sense." Chloe heard but didn't respond. It wasn't the time for explanations. "Shall we go?" Traditional Germans like the Schaeffers don't like to wait. Owen nodded, still processing the revelation. They walked towards the boardroom, and Chloe felt the curious glances of the team. She knew that after this meeting, everything would change forever. There was no going back. When they opened the door, Chloe saw 3 elegantly dressed men speaking German. Dieter Schaeffer, 70, with completely white hair, still had that aristocratic posture she remembered. Philipp Schaeffer, about 40, seemed impatient, and a third man Chloe didn't recognize. "Meine Herren, entschuldigen Sie unsere Verspätung," Chloe said in perfect German, with an accent so natural she sounded like she was born in Munich. The 3 Germans turned. Dieter raised his eyebrows, surprised by the impeccable fluency. Philip stopped looking at his watch. The third man studied her with renewed interest. It was like watching a switch flip. Chloe no longer spoke like a cleaner who knew a few German words. She spoke like someone who had lived, worked, and breathed that culture for years. Owen stood next to Chloe, completely lost in the conversation, but impressed by her naturalness. It was as if she had been reborn before his eyes. Dieter approached and shook her hand with the respect given to an equal. The conversation continued in German for a few minutes, and Owen realized it wasn't just a basic translation. Chloe was conducting a sophisticated social conversation, establishing a good relationship, doing exactly what an experienced international negotiator would do. "What are they talking about?" Owen whispered to Chloe. "Social topics. He's complimenting the view of the city, the office, asking about my background. It's standard protocol. They're assessing me to decide if you are serious enough for business." Chloe replied quietly, without losing her professional smile. Philip said something in German that indicated impatience. "Mr. Philip wants to go straight to the meeting. He has commitments in Frankfurt early tomorrow," Chloe translated. Owen straightened up. "Perfect. Let's start." Chloe positioned herself strategically between Owen and the Germans, and for the first time in 4 years, she felt completely at home. This was her natural element, her original habitat. It wasn't just about language. It was about understanding cultures, facilitating business, building bridges between different worlds. Owen began his presentation in English, pausing after each sentence for Chloe to translate. But he quickly realized that Chloe wasn't just translating word for word. She was enhancing, refining, making everything more elegant and persuasive, as if she were translating not just the language, but the intention behind the words. When Owen mentioned the turnover figures, Chloe didn't just translate. She contextualized, explained the Australian market, and compared it to German companies they knew. When he spoke of expansion plans, she added details about regulations that demonstrated deep knowledge. Dieter asked a complex question about Australian tax, and Chloe not only translated for Owen, but answered directly, demonstrating a technical understanding that left the German visibly impressed. Owen whispered during a pause while the Germans spoke among themselves, "You're not just translating, you're selling better than I am." Chloe smiled with a confidence no one on the Australian team had seen before. "That's how you do business with Germans, Mr. Davies. They need to feel that you completely understand their world. Literal translation isn't enough." The meeting continued, and Owen realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. Chloe wasn't just a competent translator or a disguised former executive. She was an innate negotiator, a perfect cultural bridge, a woman who understood both the Australian and German sides better than any consultant he had ever hired. And the Germans were clearly impressed. Philip stopped looking at his watch. Dieter was taking notes with genuine interest. The third man was whispering positive comments that Chloe translated with strategic modesty. When they took their first break, Dieter approached Chloe and said something that made her blush slightly. "What did he say?" Owen asked, curious. Chloe hesitated. "He said he rarely finds consultants with such business sophistication outside of Frankfurt and wants to know where you discovered me." Owen looked at Chloe with a completely new expression. For 2 years, she had been virtually invisible to him. Now, in one morning, she had transformed into the most valuable person in his company. "Chloe, when this meeting is over, we're going to have a very long conversation about who you really are." Chloe nodded, knowing there was no longer any way to hide the past. The invisible cleaner had disappeared forever. Chloe Christine Dumont was back in the world that was once hers, and this time she was determined not to let anyone destroy her again. Upon returning to the boardroom after the break, something fundamental had changed. The Germans no longer saw Chloe as a simple translator. There was a respect in their eyes that Owen had never seen directed at any of his employees. Dieter had even pulled up a chair for her to sit at the table instead of standing behind Owen. "Mr. Davies," Dieter said in measured English, "your consultant is very, how do you say, impressive." "Impressive," Chloe translated automatically. Mr. Dieter said, "I am impressive." She paused strategically. "But I believe he is referring to the company's presentation in general, Mr. Davies." Owen realized that Chloe was deflecting the compliment to him, protecting his ego. It was a smart, diplomatic move that further demonstrated her experience in complex negotiations. Philip opened a folder of documents and began speaking quickly in German, gesticulating. It was something important, technical, full of legal terms. Owen waited for the translation, but was surprised when Chloe responded directly in German, asking specific questions and taking detailed notes. "Chloe, what's going on?" "Please keep me informed," Owen whispered, feeling excluded from his own meeting. "Excuse me, sir. Philip is presenting the investment structure they propose for the alliance. It's quite complex. It involves holdings in 3 different countries for tax optimization." Chloe paused, organizing the information in her head with the precision of someone who had seen similar structures hundreds of times. "But there are some problematic points. The proposed configuration could create serious legal complications in Australia." Owen blinked, confused. "How do you know that?" "Because I structured similar investments when I worked in Germany. This specific configuration had issues with the Australian Tax Office, ATO, in 2018. I know at least 3 companies that had huge headaches with the tax authorities for using exactly that structure." Chloe turned to Philip and said something in German that made him stop immediately and consult his papers. Philip replied with what was clearly a worried question. Chloe nodded and continued explaining in German. Owen watched the younger German becoming increasingly interested, taking frantic notes. "Chloe, for heaven's sake, tell me what's happening. I'm the one closing this contract." Owen was starting to feel like an observer. Chloe turned to him with an expression of apology and professional determination. "Mr. Davies, I identified 3 serious problems in the structure they proposed. If we sign as is, you could face serious problems with the Australian and European tax authorities' penalties that could run into the millions." She showed him the papers covered in annotations. "I suggested some modifications that protect the interests of both parties and are totally legal in both jurisdictions." Dieter said something in German that made Philip smile, clearly impressed. "What was that now?" Owen asked, feeling completely lost. "Mr. Dieter said he rarely finds Australian consultants with such deep knowledge of European regulations and that he is impressed with the level of preparation of your team." Chloe hesitated. "He also suggested that you permanently include me in the team that will manage this alliance over the next few years." Owen felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. In 3 hours, his cleaner had transformed into the international consultant he never knew he needed. And the Germans, known for being extremely demanding, were clearly fascinated with her. "Mr. Davies," Chloe continued quietly, "I can suggest a strategic break. I need to explain the technical implications of what they are proposing before we continue. There are important decisions that need to be made." Owen nodded, still trying to process how an employee he paid minimum wage understood more about international business than his own MBA holding executives. "Meine Herren, may we take a short break?" Chloe asked the Germans, who courteously agreed. They left the boardroom, and Owen practically dragged Chloe into his office, closing the door harder than necessary. Sarah, Liam, and Jess followed him with expressions of extreme curiosity and shock. "Chloe, who the hell are you, really?" Owen exploded as soon as the door closed. Chloe sat in the chair opposite Owen's desk, maintaining her upright posture. But for the first time since she put on the blazer, he saw genuine vulnerability in her eyes, as if she were about to open a wound that had never fully healed. "My full name is Chloe Kristin Dumont. For 12 years, I lived in Germany, where I built a career I thought would last forever." She paused, taking a deep breath. 8 of those years, I worked for Siemens as Director of Operations for all of Australasia. Before that, I did an MBA at WHU in Germany and worked for 2 other German multinationals. The silence in the room was absolute. Sarah had stopped breathing. Liam's mouth was open. Jess was holding papers as if they were the only solid thing in a world that had just flipped upside down. "How did you go from Siemens director to a cleaner here?" Owen asked, his voice softer now, realizing there was a painful story behind that transformation. "Impossible." Chloe looked at her own hands, and for the first time, Owen saw tears forming in her eyes. 4 years ago, my husband, Jürgen, was arrested in Germany for tax evasion and money laundering. He was a partner in a consulting firm that had been diverting client resources for years. She paused, the pain visible on her face. "I knew nothing. I was focused on my job, but because I was married to him and we had a joint bank account, I was also investigated." "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "I wasn't charged because they could prove my complete innocence, but the scandal destroyed my reputation overnight. The German press is unforgiving, and my name became synonymous with suspicion." Chloe wiped away a tear. "No German company wanted to hire me. We lost everything. House, cars, investments, friends. Jürgen is still in prison to this day. He has 2 more years to serve." Owen sat down heavily. "And why didn't you look for a job in your field here in Australia?" Owen asked. "I tried for months. I sent resumes to all the multinationals. I offered consulting services. I tried to explain my situation." Chloe took a deep breath, recovering her usual professionalism. "But when companies searched my name online, they found all the news about the scandal. Even though my innocence was proven, no one wanted to take the risk of hiring someone associated with tax fraud." Liam shook his head, moved by the injustice. "Chloe, that's absurd. You are visibly competent. Life doesn't care about competence when you need to eat and pay the rent, Liam." Chloe straightened up, regaining her composure. "Ben, my son, was 15 when we returned. I needed stability, a place to live, food on the table. The cleaning job was the quickest thing I could get, and the company offered health insurance." Jess approached. "Chloe, what exactly is wrong with the Germans' proposal? You spoke of serious problems." Chloe picked up the meeting papers and instantly returned to professional mode. "They are proposing an investment structure that works perfectly within German laws, but that here in Australia can be interpreted as aggressive tax avoidance by the ATO." She pointed to specific spots in the documents. "If the ATO decides to audit, you could face penalties of up to 300% of the invested value, in addition to criminal proceedings for evasion." Owen leaned forward, finally understanding the gravity. "And you know how to resolve this without losing the investment?" "I know exactly how to resolve it. I need to modify 3 specific clauses in the contracts and include 2 legal safeguards that make everything transparent." Chloe showed her annotations. "This makes the investment fully legal and auditable in both countries, without reducing legitimate tax benefits. In fact, it might even increase legal certainty for both parties." Dieter said something in German that made Philip smile, clearly impressed. "What was that now?" Owen asked, feeling completely lost. "Mr. Dieter said he rarely finds Australian consultants with such a deep knowledge of European regulations, and that he is impressed with the level of preparation of your team." Chloe hesitated. "He also suggested that you permanently include me in the team that will manage this alliance over the next few years." Owen felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. In 3 hours, his cleaner had transformed into the international consultant he never knew he needed. And the Germans, known for being extremely demanding, were clearly fascinated with her. "Mr. Davies," Chloe continued quietly, "I can suggest a strategic break. I need to explain the technical implications of what they are proposing before we continue. There are important decisions that need to be made." Owen nodded, still trying to process how an employee he paid minimum wage understood more about international business than his own MBA-holding executives. "Meine Herren, may we take a short break?" Chloe asked the Germans, who courteously agreed. They left the boardroom, and Owen practically dragged Chloe into his office, closing the door harder than necessary. Sarah, Liam, and Jess followed him with expressions of extreme curiosity and shock. "Chloe, who the hell are you, really?" Owen exploded as soon as the door closed. Chloe sat in the chair opposite Owen's desk, maintaining her upright posture. But for the first time since she put on the blazer, he saw genuine vulnerability in her eyes, as if she were about to open a wound that had never fully healed. "My full name is Chloe Kristen Dumont. For 12 years, I lived in Germany, where I built a career I thought would last forever." She paused, taking a deep breath. 8 of those years, I worked for Siemens as Director of Operations for all of Australasia. Before that, I did an MBA at WHU in Germany and worked for 2 other German multinationals. The silence in the room was absolute. Sarah had stopped breathing. Liam's mouth was open. Jess was holding papers as if they were the only solid thing in a world that had just flipped upside down. "How did you go from Siemens director to a cleaner here?" Owen asked, his voice softer now, realizing there was a painful story behind that transformation. "Impossible." Chloe looked at her own hands, and for the first time, Owen saw tears forming in her eyes. 4 years ago, my husband, Jürgen, was arrested in Germany for tax evasion and money laundering. He was a partner in a consulting firm that had been diverting client resources for years. She paused, the pain visible on her face. "I knew nothing. I was focused on my job, but because I was married to him and we had a joint bank account, I was also investigated." "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "I wasn't charged because they could prove my complete innocence, but the scandal destroyed my reputation overnight. The German press is unforgiving, and my name became synonymous with suspicion." Chloe wiped away a tear. "No German company wanted to hire me. We lost everything. House, cars, investments, friends. Jürgen is still in prison to this day. He has 2 more years to serve." Owen sat down heavily. "And why didn't you look for a job in your field here in Australia?" Owen asked. "I tried for months. I sent resumes to all the multinationals. I offered consulting services. I tried to explain my situation." Chloe took a deep breath, recovering her usual professionalism. "But when companies searched my name online, they found all the news about the scandal. Even though my innocence was proven, no one wanted to take the risk of hiring someone associated with tax fraud." Liam shook his head, moved by the injustice. "Chloe, that's absurd. You are visibly competent. Life doesn't care about competence when you need to eat and pay the rent, Liam." Chloe straightened up, regaining her composure. "Ben, my son, was 15 when we returned. I needed stability, a place to live, food on the table. The cleaning job was the quickest thing I could get, and the company offered health insurance." Jess approached. "Chloe, what exactly is wrong with the Germans' proposal? You spoke of serious problems." Chloe picked up the meeting papers and instantly returned to professional mode. "They are proposing an investment structure that works perfectly within German laws, but that here in Australia can be interpreted as aggressive tax avoidance by the ATO." She pointed to specific spots in the documents. "If the ATO decides to audit, you could face penalties of up to 300% of the invested value, in addition to criminal proceedings for evasion." Owen leaned forward, finally understanding the gravity. "And you know how to resolve this without losing the investment?" "I know exactly how to resolve it. I need to modify 3 specific clauses in the contracts and include 2 legal safeguards that make everything transparent." Chloe showed her annotations. "This makes the investment fully legal and auditable in both countries, without reducing legitimate tax benefits. In fact, it might even increase legal certainty for both parties." Sarah looked at the papers over Owen's shoulder. "How can you be so sure this will work?" "Because I structured virtually identical investments for Volkswagen when they expanded operations in Australia and New Zealand. Same fiscal logic adapted for different national regulations." Chloe paused, showing a confidence that came from years of experience. "And I still maintain informal contact with some former colleagues who work in major international tax consultancies. I know exactly which structures are being questioned by national tax authorities and which are considered safe." Owen studied her. "Chloe, you're not just a disgraced former executive. You are an international specialist in European investments in the Australasian market. One of the best I've ever seen." "Owen, that was 4 years ago. A long time in the corporate world," Chloe corrected. But there was a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there for years. "No, Chloe. Knowledge like yours doesn't disappear. You just proved it by saving an $750 million contract that I was about to sign, and which could have destroyed me." Owen stood up, making a decision that would change everything. When we go back into that room, I want you to negotiate directly with me, not as a translator, but as the company's senior consultant. Chloe hesitated, the old fear returning. Owen, I can't do that. Officially, I'm your cleaning employee. If the Germans find out the truth. Chloe, the Germans have already figured out, you're no ordinary translator. Dieter has 40 years of international business experience. He knows world-class competence when he sees it, regardless of the job title on paper. Owen walked to the window. And honestly, after what I witnessed today, I think you understand more about this specific business than I do myself. A soft knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was the receptionist. Mr. Davies, the Germans are asking if they can continue. They said they have some specific technical questions they'd like to discuss with the Australian consultant. Owen and Chloe exchanged meaningful glances. They called you a consultant, not a translator, Owen observed. Because you introduced me as a translator, but I acted as an international consultant. For traditional Germans, like the Schaeffers, technical competence speaks louder than formal titles. They recognize the experience when they saw it. Then we're going to give them exactly what they want. Owen made the final decision. Chloe, finish this meeting as the international consultant you really are. Close this deal with me as a partner, not an employee. Chloe looked at him with a mix of hope and terror. Hope of returning to who she was born to be. Terror that everything could fall apart again. Owen, after today, there's no going back. You understand that, right? Owen smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Chloe, after what you did today, I don't want there to be any going back. I want you to be exactly who you always were, the best international negotiator I've ever met. When they returned to the boardroom, Chloe no longer tried to hide. She sat at the table as an equal, opened her own folder of documents, and began negotiating the biggest contract in Davies Group history with the elegance and competence that had made her a legend in German multinationals. And for the first time in 4 years, Chloe Christine Dumont was exactly who she was born to be. A brilliant executive, closing multi-million-dollar deals with the naturalness of someone who should never have stopped. 3 hours later, when the Germans finally rose from the table, Owen knew he had witnessed something historic. Not only had they closed the original $750 million contract, but Chloe had structured a much broader alliance that would include 2 more projects over the next 18 months. The total value reached $1.2 billion. Dieter approached Chloe and shook her hand with the deep respect that only Germans give to someone who truly impresses them. Frau Dumont, it was a pleasure working with someone of your calibre. We rarely find this combination of technical knowledge and commercial elegance. Philip added in measured but sincere English. You transformed a good investment into an exceptional opportunity. Our team in Frankfurt will be very impressed. The third man, whom Chloe discovered was the group's CFO, handed her his personal card. Madam, if you ever consider returning to the European market, we would be delighted to discuss opportunities. After the Germans left, promising to return the following week with the final documentation, Owen remained alone with Chloe in the room. The silence was loaded with tension, achievement, and irreversible change. Chloe, Owen finally said, loosening his tie for the first time that day. In 3 hours, you've just closed the biggest deal in my company's history. You not only saved a contract that could have ruined me, but transformed it into something much bigger than I dreamed. He paused, searching for the right words. And you did it using knowledge and experience that I didn't even know existed, meters away from me for 2 years. Chloe put the documents into the folder, avoiding looking at him. Now that the adrenaline of the negotiation had passed, the reality of what had happened was setting in. She was no longer the invisible cleaner. There was no turning back. I did what needed to be done, Owen. Nothing more. Stop calling me Mr. Davies. After what happened today, I think we can be Owen and Chloe. He sat down heavily. Chloe, I need to ask you a direct question, and I want a completely honest answer. Chloe finally looked at him, bracing herself. Why did you never tell me who you really were? Why did you agree to work as a cleaner when you are clearly one of the most brilliant business minds I've ever met? Chloe sighed deeply, as if she had carried that weight for years. Owen, when you are desperate, when you need to put food on your son's table and pay the rent at the end of the month, pride is a luxury you cannot afford. She paused, looking out the window at the city that had welcomed her when she had nothing. And honestly, after losing everything in Germany, after seeing my name associated with scandals in every newspaper, I didn't have confidence in my professional ability. I started to believe that perhaps I wasn't as good as I thought. And today? How do you feel after impressing some of the most sophisticated investors in Europe? Chloe smiled. A true smile, full of an emotion she hadn't felt for years. Today, I felt like myself for the first time in 4 years, like I had woken up from a very long nightmare. Owen stood up and walked to the window. Chloe, I have a proposal to make. In fact, I have several proposals. Chloe waited in silence, her heart beating faster. Option 1, you accept one of the offers that will surely come from the Germans. You become an independent international consultant. You earn a lot of money. You completely rebuild your career in the European market. Owen turned to her. Option 2, you become my partner at Davies Group. We lead this international expansion together, and all those that follow. Chloe blinked, sure she had misheard. Partner? Chloe, after what I witnessed today, I am absolutely certain that you know international markets infinitely better than I do. You have the contacts, experience, credibility, and clearly the talent to transform a regional Australian company into an international player. Owen walked closer to the desk. I'm offering a 25% partnership in the company, plus a special share in the profits of all international contracts you bring in. Chloe's jaw literally dropped. For 4 years, she had cleaned offices and dreamed of a second chance. Now, suddenly, she was being offered a partnership in a company that had just closed the biggest contract in its history. Owen, I can't accept something like this. It's too generous. You barely know me, Chloe. Today, you saved my company from a contract that could have resulted in criminal proceedings and multi-million-dollar fines. Then you transformed a $750 million deal into a $1.2 billion alliance. If that doesn't deserve a partnership, I don't know what does. Owen smiled genuinely. Besides, I have a strong feeling that with you as a partner, those $1.2 billion from the Germans are just the beginning of something much bigger. Chloe stood up and walked to the window, looking at the city where she had started her life from scratch 4 years earlier. A city that had welcomed her as a refugee and was now offering her a second chance she never imagined possible. For a few minutes, she remained silent, processing the magnitude of the proposal. Partnership meant financial security for her and Ben. Professional recognition. It meant she could finally use all her knowledge and experience without hiding. Owen, can I make a counter-proposal? Of course. I accept the partnership, but with 3 non-negotiable conditions. Chloe turned to him with a determination that Owen was learning to recognize. First, I want every cleaner and general services employee in this company to have their salaries reviewed and increased by at least 30%. If I can go from cleaner to partner, others also deserve opportunities and recognition. Owen nodded immediately, impressed by her generosity and social awareness. Agreed, completely. And the second condition, I want to establish a scholarship program for employees' children. Education changes lives, and I want the company to be part of that transformation. Chloe paused. Ben got a scholarship to Sydney Uni, but I know how many families here struggle to provide quality education for their children. Perfect. We will create the Chloe Dumont Scholarship Program. And the third condition. Chloe smiled mischievously. I want 1 week to train my cleaning replacement. I can't leave the job half finished. Owen laughed, genuinely amused and moved by her humility. Chloe, you just closed an $1.2 billion deal, and you're worried about training a cleaner. Owen, one thing I learned in life is that all honest work has dignity, and every transition must be done with responsibility and respect. Chloe extended her hand. So, we have a deal. Owen shook her hand, knowing he was sealing not only a business alliance, but a friendship that would change both their lives forever. We have a deal, Chloe. Welcome back to the world where you always belonged. Outside the boardroom, Sarah, Liam, and Jess waited anxiously. When Owen and Chloe emerged, both smiling, they knew something extraordinary had happened. Everyone, Owen announced to the gathered team. I want to officially introduce Chloe Kristen Dumont, our new partner and director of international business for Davies Group. The silence was broken by Sarah, who began to applaud. In seconds, the entire office was applauding. The news spread like wildfire. Chloe was thrilled, but also scared by the attention. For 4 years, she had hidden. Now, suddenly, she was the center of attention. Chloe, this is incredible, Jess approached. You deserve every bit of recognition. Liam added, I always knew there was something special about you. The way you observed the meetings, how you understood the conversations. Now it all makes sense. Sarah, with tears in her eyes, said, Chloe, I'm so happy for you. You're going to revolutionize this company. That afternoon, Chloe moved into an office on level 38 with a panoramic view of the city. Sitting at her new desk, reviewing documents for other international projects that were already arriving, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Genuine hope for the future. Her phone rang. It was Ben, calling from university. Mom, you won't believe what I'm hearing here at the faculty. Everyone's talking about a story about a cleaner who became a company partner after closing a multi-million-dollar contract. They say it's too inspiring to be true. Chloe laughed, realizing the story was already spreading. Son, there are things in life that are so extraordinary, they seem impossible, but sometimes they really happen. Mum, that story is about you, isn't it? Chloe looked out the window of her new office. Yes, Ben, it's about us, about starting over, about never giving up, even when all seems lost. When she hung up the phone, Chloe allowed herself to cry for the first time in 4 years. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief, of gratitude from a woman who had found her way back home. Chloe Kristen Dumont was no longer the invisible cleaner. She was a partner at Davies Group, one of the country's most respected international negotiators, and a woman who had proven that second chances truly exist. Sometimes they come when you least expect them, disguised as a crisis, and sometimes to find them, you need to have the courage to show who you really are. Chloe had found that courage and was now finally ready to build the future she always deserved. 6 months after the meeting that changed everything, Chloe was in her level 38 office, reviewing contracts for 3 new international projects. The glass table was covered with documents in English and German, proof of how Davies Group had been transformed. But this Monday morning, Chloe couldn't concentrate. She looked out the window, watching the movement of the city, still processing the speed with which her life had changed. 6 months ago, she arrived at work at 5 a.m., carrying cleaning supplies. Today, she had 3 assistants, a salary 20 times higher, and meetings with CEOs of multinationals. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Marcia, her principal executive assistant, a 28-year-old with a degree in international relations, who spoke 4 languages and had worked in consultancies before joining Chloe's team. Chloe, 2 more proposals arrived this morning, one from the Japanese group Mitsui and another from an Italian conglomerate that wants to invest in renewable energy. Marcia placed the folders on the table. And Owen wants to talk to you when you have a moment. He said it's important. Chloe smiled, adjusting her glasses. Tell Owen I'm free now. And Marcia, can you reschedule my 3 p.m. meeting? I want to calmly review these proposals before making any decisions. Marcia nodded and left. Chloe picked up the first folder. But before opening it, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The transformation hadn't just been professional. Her personal life was also completely different. Ben, now in his 2nd year of engineering at Sydney Uni, was flourishing like never before. The company's scholarship allowed him to dedicate himself entirely to his studies, and his grades were among the best. More importantly, he had regained his self-confidence and hope for the future. Chloe had moved into a spacious apartment in Surrey Hills with 3 bedrooms and a beautiful view. Ben had his own study, and Chloe had set up a home office. It was a life she never dreamed of having again. Her phone rang. An international call. Chloe Kristen Dumont answered in professional mode. Chloe, Dieter Schäfer, wie geht's? The voice of the German patriarch sounded cheerful. Monsieur, what a surprise. I'm very well, thank you. How can I help you? Dieter continued in German. He was calling to invite her to an international conference on investments in Australasia that would be held in Frankfurt the following month. They wanted her to be the keynote speaker representing the Australian market. That's a great honor, Mr. Schäfer, but I need to talk to my partner before confirming. Good, but Chloe, may I say one thing? Over the past 6 months, you have become a reference in the European market for investments in Australia. Your name is respected in the best business circles in Frankfurt. When she hung up, Chloe was absorbed. 6 months ago, her name was associated with scandal and disgrace. Now, apparently, it was synonymous with competence and success. Life has a peculiar way of coming full circle. Owen knocked on the door and entered without waiting for an answer, as had become customary. The alliance had evolved into a genuine friendship, based on mutual respect and absolute trust. Chloe, you look thoughtful. Any problem? Owen slumped into the armchair opposite her desk, carrying a folder. No problem. Dieter Schäfer just called from Frankfurt. He wants me to give an international conference on investments in Australasia. Chloe smiled. Apparently in recent months, I've become a reference in the European market. Owen chuckled. Chloe, you were always a reference. You just needed an opportunity to show it again. He opened the folder. And, speaking of opportunities, I have a proposal that might interest you. Chloe leaned forward, curious. A proposal came from BHP. They are structuring a joint venture with European companies for deep-sea resource extraction. It's a $25 billion project. Owen paused to let the number sink in. And they specifically want Davies Group as a consultant, with you leading the negotiations. Chloe felt her heart accelerate. $25 billion. It would be the biggest project in the company's history, and potentially one of the largest international consulting contracts ever closed in Australia. Owen, this is gigantic. Are you sure they are talking specifically about me? They said verbatim that they want the former Siemens director who impressed the Germans and is revolutionizing the Australian international consulting market. Owen smiled. Your reputation reached BHP. Chloe stood up and walked to the window, trying to process the magnitude of the opportunity. 6 months ago, she was cleaning executive washrooms. Now, the country's largest company wanted to hire her for the biggest project of the decade. Owen, accepting a project of this size means drastically expanding our operation. We'll need to hire more consultants, open offices in other cities, maybe even overseas. I know, and I'm prepared for that. Owen stood up. Chloe, when I offered you the partnership, I knew you would transform this company. But even I didn't imagine it would be so fast and so big. Chloe turned to him. Owen, I need to be honest. A project like this will attract international attention. My past in Germany, the scandal with Jürgen, it all could resurface. Owen studied her. Chloe, are you scared? Not exactly scared, but worried. We've built something beautiful here, a solid reputation. I don't want the past to harm what we've achieved. Owen approached and put a hand on her shoulder. Chloe, you faced the worst life can offer and came out stronger. You lost everything and rebuilt an even better career. If anyone tries to use your past against you, they will find that you are no longer the same vulnerable woman of 4 years ago. Chloe nodded, feeling the confidence return. You're right, and besides, the truth was always on our side. I never did anything wrong. Exactly. And now you have a solid company, an impeccable reputation in Australia, and powerful friends who support you. Owen returned to the folder. So, what do you think? Do we accept the BHP challenge? Chloe looked once more out the window, seeing the city that had welcomed her when she had nothing, and was now offering her the biggest opportunity of her career. We accept, but with one condition. Which one? I want part of the fees from this project to be allocated to expanding our scholarship program. If we're going to grow, I want our social responsibility to grow with us. Owen smiled, impressed by her generosity. Done. We will allocate 5% of the net fees to scholarships. They spent the next 2 hours planning the company's expansion. They discussed the need to hire at least 10 new consultants, open an office in Perth to be closer to BHP, and possibly establish a representation in Frankfurt. Chloe, there's one more thing, Owen said as they were finishing up. I received a call from the Australian newspaper. They want to do a cover story about you for the business section, from cleaner to executive. The story of the woman who is changing the Australian international consulting market. Chloe hesitated. Owen, I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of exposure. Chloe, whether you like it or not, you've become a symbol proof that Australia has exceptional talent and that second chances really do exist. Owen leaned forward. Your story can inspire thousands of people who are going through difficulties. Chloe thought for a moment. For 4 years, she had hidden, ashamed of the past and afraid of the future. Perhaps it was time to fully embrace who she had become. All right, but I want the report to include information about our scholarship program. If I'm going to be a symbol, let it be a useful one. That afternoon, Chloe had her first interview for a national media outlet in 4 years. The journalist was fascinated by her story. Miss Chloe, the journalist asked at the end, what advice would you give to people who have lost everything and believe they have no future? Chloe thought carefully. I would tell them that sometimes we need to hit rock bottom to discover our true strength, that real competence is never lost. It just lies dormant, waiting for the right opportunity, and that second chances exist, but they usually come disguised as hard work and a lot of humility. When the interview ended, Chloe felt liberated. For the first time in years, she had spoken openly about her story without shame or fear. She had fully embraced her journey, with all its falls and victories. At the end of the day, Chloe found a photo that Ben had given her. It was of the two of them on the day of his high school graduation, a few months after returning from Germany. Both were thin, tired, but smiling. She placed the photo next to a more recent one, taken at the celebration party when she became a partner. Ben was radiant, confident, full of plans. The transformation in both of them was evident. Chloe smiled, put the documents away, and prepared to go home. In the car, she called Ben. "Son, how was the day at the faculty?" "Mum, incredible." The international engineering professor commented on an Australian executive who is gaining recognition in Europe for infrastructure projects. When he said the name Chloe Dumont, I almost shouted, "That's my mother." Chloe laughed, her heart full of pride and happiness. "Ben, can I tell you a secret? Today, we accepted a $25 billion project with BHP. It will be the biggest in our history." Ben was silent for a moment. "Mum, you are incredible. In 6 months, you went from a cleaner to a consultant on multi-billion-dollar projects. That's surreal. Ben, none of this would be possible without you. You gave me the strength to continue when I wanted to give up. You reminded me every day that the future is worth fighting for." When she hung up, Chloe was arriving home. The apartment in Surrey Hills was lit, welcoming, full of the life she had rebuilt, brick by brick. Ben was in the living room studying. "Mum, how was the day of Australia's most famous new executive?" Ben stood up to hug her. "It was a day of important decisions, son. Decisions that will define our future for the next few years." They ate dinner together, talking about Ben's plans, the possibility of him doing an exchange in Germany, and the dreams that were now possible again. Later, Chloe sat on the terrace looking at the city lights. She thought about Jürgen, still in prison in Germany, and realized she no longer felt anger or resentment. She felt indifference and gratitude for having found the strength to start over. She thought about all the cleaning employees and the scholarship program that was changing lives. She thought about Owen, who had taken a chance on her when she didn't even believe in herself, and she thought about the future that stretched ahead, full of possibilities that 6 months ago seemed impossible. Chloe Christine Dumont was no longer the destroyed woman who had returned from Germany 4 years earlier. She was not the invisible cleaner. She was a respected executive, a prosperous partner, a proud mother, and a woman who had proven that life always offers a second chance to those who have the courage to take it. 1 year after the meeting that changed everything forever, Chloe was on the main stage of the Sydney Convention Centre, facing an audience of 1,000 entrepreneurs and investors. It was the National International Business Congress, and she had been invited as the keynote speaker to talk about professional reconstruction and excellence in international consulting. But today wasn't just another conference. It was the day she would receive the Australian Business Executive of the Year award, granted by the Australian Association of Executives for the exceptional work she had developed at Davies Group and the impact on the Australian market. Chloe adjusted the microphone and looked at the audience. In the front row, Ben was smiling proudly. Beside him, Owen, who had become much more than a partner. Sarah, Liam, and Jess were also there, representing the team that had grown from 15 to 120 employees in the last year. Exactly 18 months ago, her voice was firm. "I was working as a cleaner in a corporate building in the Sydney CBD. I arrived at 5 a.m., cleaned offices, emptied rubbish, and tried to be invisible not because I was ashamed of the job, but because I was ashamed of who I thought I had become." A murmur ran through the audience. Today, exactly 18 months later, our company has closed international contracts worth $5 billion. We have created 250 direct jobs. We have established alliances with 15 countries, and our scholarship program has already benefited over 800 families. The audience erupted in applause, but Chloe raised her hand, asking for silence. "But I'm not here to talk about numbers. I'm here to talk about something much more important, about second chances, about the dignity of work, and about how Australia wastes talent every day, simply because we don't know how to look beyond appearances." Chloe paused, letting the words sink in. "For 4 years, I was just a statistic, an immigrant who returned to her country without resources, a middle-aged woman competing for jobs with much younger people, a highly qualified professional that the market had discarded by association with a scandal." Her voice became more intense. "How many of you have cleaning, security, maintenance employees who might be former teachers, former engineers, former administrators, whom life forced to accept any available job?" The silence in the auditorium was absolute. Chloe saw people looking at each other, reflecting. "I was lucky, very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time when a crisis forced my boss to discover who I really was." Chloe looked directly at Owen. "But how many exceptional talents are hidden in our own offices, waiting only for an opportunity to show their worth?" Chloe told her full story. The career in Germany, the scandal that wasn't her fault, the return to Australia, the years of cleaning, and finally the opportunity that changed everything. She spoke about the fear, the shame, the feeling of uselessness, but also about resilience, hope, and the importance of never fully giving up. The most important lesson I learned, Chloe said at the end of the conference, is that real competence is never lost. It can be dormant, hidden, underutilized, but it is always there waiting for the opportunity to resurface. And sometimes, to find that opportunity, we need to accept starting from scratch, working hard, and keeping our dignity intact, no matter what we are doing. The audience rose to its feet in a 5-minute standing ovation. Chloe saw tears in many people's eyes. Excited executives, young professionals taking notes. After the conference, during the awards ceremony, Chloe went back on stage to receive the Executive of the Year trophy. The president of the Australian Association of Executives read a quote that made her blush. Chloe Christine Dumont represents the best of Australian business. Exceptional technical competence, international strategic vision, genuine social responsibility, and an extraordinary ability to transform adversity into opportunity. In 18 months, she not only rebuilt her own career, but revolutionized the Australian international consulting market and inspired thousands of professionals across the country. When Chloe held the trophy, heavy and elegant, she felt she was holding much more than professional recognition. She held the physical proof that life really does offer second chances to those who have the courage to take them. After the ceremony at the cocktail party, Chloe was approached by dozens of people. Executives seeking alliances, young professionals asking for advice, journalists wanting interviews. But the conversations that touched her the most were with employees from various sectors who approached to tell their own stories of starting over. "Miss Chloe," said a 50-year-old woman, "I'm an HR manager for a multinational. After hearing your conference, I'm going to review our hiring processes. How much talent might we be losing due to prejudice?" A young executive approached. "Chloe, my father is a commercial building concierge, but he has an accounting background. He hasn't been able to find a job in his field for 10 years. Your story made me realize that perhaps I can help him in a different way." It was exactly the impact Chloe hoped to create. Later that evening, Chloe, Ben, and Owen had dinner together at an elegant restaurant to celebrate. The conversation flowed between future plans, memories of the past few months, and reflections on how everything had changed. "Mom," Ben said during dessert, "I realized something today. You didn't just rebuild your career, you became an even better person than you were before everything fell apart." Chloe looked at her son, surprised. "Why do you think that?" "Because before, in Germany, you were competent and successful, but perhaps a bit distant from the reality of those who struggle to survive. Now, you are competent, successful, and completely connected to the difficulties of ordinary people." Ben paused. "You use your success to help others. That is much more powerful." Owen nodded. "Ben is right. Chloe, you have become not only an exceptional executive, but a leader who truly understands social responsibility." Chloe felt her eyes fill with tears of gratitude. "You two are the reason I managed to get here. Ben, you gave me purpose in the darkest moments. Owen, you gave me the opportunity when no one else would. And you," Owen replied, "transformed that opportunity into something much bigger than I ever imagined possible." 2 months later, Chloe was in Frankfurt, in the Schäfer and Söhne office, signing a contract to establish a permanent joint venture between the two companies. Davies Group would open an office in Frankfurt, and Schäfer would establish permanent operations in Australia. Dieter Schäfer, now 71, observed the signing with evident satisfaction. "Chloe, when we met you 2 years ago, we knew we were in the presence of someone special, but we never imagined you would become one of the most respected executives in Australasia, Mr. Schäfer. Much of this was only possible thanks to the trust you placed in me from the very beginning." Philip Schäfer added, "Chloe, in 2 years, you have proven that Australia has some of the best business talents in the world. We are eager to expand our investments in the country." When Chloe left the Schäfer office, she walked through the streets of Frankfurt, where she had lived for 12 years. It was strange to be back, but not as the broken refugee who had left 4 years earlier. She was returning as a respected executive, closing international deals, representing Australia at the highest corporate levels. She passed the building where she lived with Jürgen, now occupied by other people. She felt a pang of nostalgia, but not sadness. It was nostalgia for the young, ambitious person she had been, but also gratitude for the wiser, stronger woman she had become. That night in her hotel, Chloe received an unexpected call. It was Jürgen, calling from prison. "Chloe, I saw the news about you. I'm impressed with what you achieved." Chloe took a deep breath. "Jürgen, What do you want? I want to apologize for everything, for destroying our life, for putting you and Ben in an impossible situation. His voice sounded remorseful. And I want you to know that I'm proud of the way you rebuilt everything. Chloe was silent for a moment. For 4 years, she had waited for that apology. Now that it had arrived, she realized she no longer needed it. Jürgen, I accept your apologies, but our life together ended a long time ago. I hope you find your own path when you get out of prison. Chloe, can I ask one thing? Are you happy now? Chloe looked out the hotel window, seeing the Frankfurt lights shining in the night. I am happier than I have ever been, Jürgen. I discovered that I am much stronger than I imagined. When she hung up, Chloe felt completely liberated from the past. Jürgen was just a memory now, a lesson learned, a chapter closed. On the flight back to Sydney, Chloe reviewed the documents for the new contract and planned the next steps of the international expansion. Davies Group was becoming one of the leading consultancies in Australasia, with offices in Sydney, Frankfurt, and plans to open operations in Singapore and Tokyo. But more important than the business growth, Chloe knew she had found her true purpose, using her success to create opportunities for others, breaking down prejudices about professional value, and proving that second chances really do exist. When the plane landed in Sydney, Ben was waiting for her at the airport with a bouquet of flowers and a smile that lit up the entire terminal. Mum, welcome back to your real home. Chloe hugged her son, feeling that she had finally found not only professional success but inner peace. She had gone from invisible cleaner to respected international executive, but more importantly, she had become a living example that life always offers a second chance to those who have the courage to take it. Chloe Christine Dumont was no longer the woman who had lost everything in Germany. She was the woman who had rebuilt everything in Australia and was now ready to conquer the world again, but this time on her own terms. With her own strength, and with the wisdom that only comes from someone who has hit rock bottom and found the strength to climb back up. The journey back to the top was complete, and the future, for the first time in years, looked infinitely promising.